Diggs took home the award for Best Featured Actor in a Musical. Bravo for playing dual roles in the Broadway hit. The actor now stars in Blindspotting. It's a new film that he co-wrote and produced. Diggs plays Collin, an Oakland man who is trying to stay out of trouble during his final 3 days of probation. And oh boy, in this clip, his best friend Miles gives him a hard time about his former girlfriend.
What is your problem with Val?
Val is a disloyal. When you were in jail, did she put money on your books? Did she come visit you even one time at Rita while you were locked up? Because I'm pretty sure I went 2 times a week, 45 minutes each way, $500 on your book on day one.
She talked to me on the phone.
How gracious of her to have called you once. And what did she want to talk to you about changing up your lifestyle, changing up your ways? You're not a thug, drug dealer. You went to jail on a fire technicality.
Did I?
Yes. How are we supposed to know that hipsters are so flammable?
That's such a great line. The San Francisco Chronicle calls the movie a serious work of passion, intuition, and artistic intelligence. W. Diggs joins us now at the table. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And let's just say bravo to you and Rafael Casal in that scene. Rafael and you have been friends since high school.
Yeah.
He plays Miles, and the two of you wrote this. You wrote this together for over 10 years.
Been writing it over the course of about a decade. Just, really with the impetus of trying to show off Oakland, California on screen. It's we felt we had never seen the city represented in the way that we know it to be. So we were trying to tell an Oakland story, and when you do that, you come up against a lot of other issues. Oakland is like a lot of other cities in the country.
But it starts with a police shooting. We should say that it starts with a police shooting.
It does. So when we started conceiving the project, was around 2009, right when Oscar Grant was murdered at Fruitvale Bar Station in Oakland. So the discussion in Oakland at the time was around police shootings, and Oscar's face was on everybody's T-shirt, and the sort of trauma of that incident. Flash forward now, I think the fantasy of all the protests around that time was that things would change, but 10 years later, the biggest update we made in the script is that almost no one is affected by the tragedy except Collin, because he happens to be there to witness it.
Yeah.
I want to get back to Oakland, because Oakland is changing, and that's what's about in the movie. But also, there's this device you use about probation. And there's a way in which, as a viewer, I may have this totally wrong, but you feel as a viewer, you're like, oh my gosh, is something going to go wrong before? And you feel the tension, which it must. Were you trying to replicate the tension of what it's like to be a young black man walking on the streets with the cops always looking after you?
There's a moment in the film where I think almost everybody in the theater sits in Collin's shoes in one of those experiences, and that's a really gratifying experience because it's a difference. It's a cultural difference that not everybody gets to feel, but when we're all in the theater together, we get to feel it. I think. And probation that clock is a technique, right? It's a filmic technique to give a countdown, but it's also real. If you know anybody on probation, or if you've ever been on probation, that's a trap. There are a series of traps set up to send you back to jail because they make money off of you in jail.
The issue of race, too, between you and Miles is interesting because you are really good friends, but there's also a lot of friction in your relationship.
Yeah, well, Miles and Collin grew up together. Yeah. They have almost exactly the same context. One happens to be white, one happens to be black. The changing surroundings around them means that their context is changing, and now they are in different kinds of danger because of how the outside world sees them, really having nothing to do with anything they've built themselves, but that's a thing they have to reckon with in a changing society.
What's so amazing about the probation idea is that if you put a foot wrong, you're going back to jail. But when that stops, when you're off probation, the character's off probation, it's still there in a way. That's what being in, that's what living in Oakland is like.
Yeah. And there are traps everywhere for a lot of different kinds of people. And one of the biggest traps in the film is poverty. None of these people are wealthy people. None of them necessarily have the means to move or leave their situation, but the city is being ripped out from under them. So where are they going to go? As the rents keep rising, as there are fewer and fewer things to do in the city that they can participate in. Right?
And the reviews have been phenomenal. The New York Times says Blindspotting ought to be seen by the widest audience possible. Many times we have filmmakers here and say, who do you want this movie to be directed towards?
Oh, yeah.
To read the widest audience possible. That must be so gratifying.
It is. It is. You know, it's our first film, and I think we get a lot of credit for breaking convention, but I think a lot of that is because we didn't know any of the conventions, and so
that you were breaking.
Yeah. But it's now it's a dream come true that it's actually coming out, and I want more than anything for as many people as possible to
And
see
the
it.
title "Blindspotting" I think is genius, and the way you explain that in the movie.
Yeah, it's a slang term. We pride ourselves on creating slang in the Bay Area. It's a very Oakland thing to do, and all slang is derivative. So Val, who plays Collin's girlfriend, who Miles is railing about in that scene, is studying psychology, and she creates slang terms as a way of memorizing psych terms. Blindspotting is what she comes up with to remember this phenomenon of Rubens vase, which you've probably seen
have
in
that
textbooks.
picture.
Yeah.
Can we
Throw
put up
it
that
out.
picture of
You
Rubens'
can.
face? Yeah.
But it's either a vase or two faces, depending
Depending on what you see.
on how you see it, and all of your life experiences are going to lead you to see one or the other first. It's not that you can't see the other side, it's that you always have to work for it. Your instinct always
I
is.
saw the faces first.
Yeah.
I saw the faces
After
first.
that sailboat scene, there was a festival of slang, which is so delightful.
And that's all real Oakland slang. We just had our premiere in the town, and that scene, you know, everybody follows that scene better if you're from Oakland.
Well, Oakland has a lot to be proud of, and basketball team and you. Kenny
Congrats.
Diggs, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
Blindspotting opens in select cities on Friday and expands nationwide on July 27th. And you can hear more of CBS This Morning on our podcast, available on Apple's podcast app or wherever you like to download your podcasts.